I enjoyed our first gathering at 8:30. We had almost 80 people there, and it's getting pretty packed, and so I'm excited about this group too. More and more keep coming back. A few weeks ago, my wife and I were taking a walk down a little country road that we live close to, and I had that thought, that brainstorm deep thought of, I wonder if people are going to come back to church after this, pandemic is over, and we have to isolate like we've been doing. And of course, that was a very deep thought. And then the other side of that was, I wonder, they might come back. They might come back in an overabundance of people because they know how much church means to them. The other side was saying also, I wonder if anybody's going to show up. Because at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning when you're in your pajamas and you're tuning in online or wherever, that's not a bad scene either. And I only speak from experience. And so let me just say I'm glad you're back. I said, LaVon, which will it be? What do you think? And she said, both. Being the accurate person that she is. And so I'm praying that more and more we'll realize the value of gathering. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But things have been kind of strange, haven't they, over the last few weeks? Here's one strange thing that happened. On that walk we were taking, we were going to an area that's kind of low, and the creek, where it was, it's usually dry, it was kind of flooding, and it was going over the road about maybe half an inch, maybe an inch in small sections. So we decided just to tiptoe through not through the tulips, but through the water there, and all these little bitty catfish were swimming across the road. And there wasn't even a catfish crossing sign. I mean, they're supposed to note those things, but we were catching them and taking videos and showing to our kids. There's another strange thing we've all probably experienced. These days, when you go into a bank and you are not wearing a mask, that's when you get arrested. It used to be the other way. Things are different these days. For just a little bit, I want to put you into an environment that you might think is different. The apostles were put into a situation that they'd never experienced before. They didn't know what was coming next. They didn't know what the next day, the next week, the next month was going to be. And so they were just in a quandary, but they knew that Jesus was there, so everything was going to be okay. Turn to Matthew chapter 28, if you will. We just got through singing the song, Count Your Blessings, and that's a song from over 100 years ago. It was a youth group song back then. And then we just sang the song, Tell Me the Story of Jesus. So today I'm going to go back to that theme. On that same walk with LaVon, we often challenge each other with deep questions. And so the question of the day was not just how many people would come back to church, but what would church be like if there were no ministries? For the last 8 weeks or so, we've been really not doing a whole lot of ministries like we typically do. We have something like 45 different ministries going on, whether it's a clothing room or feeding people in the community through our food pantry, or some kind of counseling situations going on. And we've got a lot of ministries going on typically, but not so much the last few weeks. Would church services be enough to get people and keep people faithful to God? I mean, if this is all we had to offer and all we did, would it be enough for people to come back to? And so I want to go to the setting in this chapter 28 of Matthew. If you'll notice in verse 8, there is the line that says, when the apostles saw Jesus, they fell at his feet and worshiped him. So they were grabbing hold of his feet, one version says. I think that's in verse 8. That's verse 9. The old Jesus said to them, greetings, and they came up and took hold of his feet and worshiped him. A little later on, this is what we're going to read. it happens again. Jesus shows up on the mountain where he tells his apostles to meet him, and the first thing they do is fall down and worship him. With those things in mind, we're going to read this whole chapter together, and then I'm going to talk to you about the things that Christ said his church is going to be about. And these things, they are going to be so powerful that it's going to make sure that Christ's church will never pass away. I think it's Matthew 16:18. Christ says, I'll build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Jesus is going to give these people, these apostles, some reasons why this thing is going to be so powerful. And we're going to talk about those after we read this passage. So this is Matthew 28, 1 through the end. Now after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He's not here, for he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And behold, he's going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. See, I have told you. So they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to tell his disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and said, greetings. And they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. And Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go into Galilee, and there they will see me. While they were going, behold, some of the guard went to the city and told the chief priests and all that had taken place. And when they had assembled with the elders and taken counsel, they gave a sufficient sum of money to the soldiers and said, tell people, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were sleeping. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. So they took the money and did as they were directed. And this story has been spread among the Jews to this day. Now verse 16. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. All right, let's take this apart just a little bit, okay? When Jesus starts talking about the most important things that his church is going to be about, it's in the middle of a worship scene. Now, the people are not sitting in pews like this, and they're not having hymnals in front of them or a PowerPoint. They're in a worship scene. They're all on their knees. They're bowing down to Jesus Christ. Some of them are grabbing his feet. And not just the apostles, other places said there were others there too. It was a worship scene because when Jesus is in their presence, now all they can do is worship. That's it. They saw him killed and they saw him get up and they've seen him since. They know that he is God in the flesh. And so they fall down and worship him. It's in this scene that Jesus decides to say, here are the things that my church is going to be about. The things that are going to hold people to me till the end of time. And the first thing he, I guess, would assume in this setting is Christ's church encourages worship. So that's a pretty simple one, okay? We're going to be people that encourage worship. Because there are a lot of people outside these doors today who are not worshiping God, not worshiping Christ, not worshiping the God that created them. If you're going to be a part of Christ's church, this is one thing over and over again we're going to do. We're going to be encouraging people to worship. Now, a long time ago, well, at least when I was growing up, 10 years ago or so, we used to be encouraged to bring people to church. Remember that? Bring people to church. And I thought that was a really good thing to do. And I thought that all that they would experience was the worship service like we understood it to be. But the problem with that is our worship services were not really intended to entertain anybody or compliment anybody or bless anybody except for God himself. And so my friends would come, and sometimes they wouldn't. But if they experienced worship for the first time and God in our midst for the first time, that may have more of an impact than we know. But I don't think Christ is only encouraging people to worship on Sunday morning like we do. I think he wants his people, his church, to worship him, worship God daily, all the time, in praise and in scripture reading and in prayer and giving God our lives, bowing down. The word is proskuneo, which means to bow down and kiss the hand of the leader, the boss, the father, the king, to bow down and humble yourself. That's worship. And so in this worship setting is when Christ says, all right, number one, my church is going to worship. They're the people that take the time to bow at the feet of God and worship. That's number one. My church is going to encourage worship. Here's number two. Now look at verse 19. Verse 18. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples. If you're taking notes, here's the second E, which we lead with today. First, we're going to encourage worship. Next, we're going to evangelize the lost. Christ's church is going to be about evangelizing the lost. Now, what that means is telling other people about the story of Jesus. Telling them about the Christ that came and the Christ that died and the Christ that rose again, and that people can have forgiveness of sins only through Jesus Christ. That's what the Scripture says. And so my church, Jesus says, my church is going to be about evangelizing the lost. One of the reasons why is because Luke 13:3, Jesus said, I came to seek and save the lost. We are going to be about what Jesus was about. And so we're going to evangelize the lost. Now, a part of that evangelistic approach is the next thing that he says. He says, verse 19, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Now, disciples were followers and believers in and emulators of Christ, and baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. A part of the evangelistic thrust, Jesus says, is this baptismal scene that comes right on the heels of making disciples, of evangelizing people. In fact, when you look through Scripture, every single time that somebody says, I'm a believer in Christ, they're immediately going to the water. Like the eunuch in Acts chapter 8, he says, hey, listen, you just told me the story of Jesus. There's some water. Why can't I be baptized? Because when they understand what Christ did for them, the death, burial, and resurrection, their automatic response, never separated, we're going to have baptism on Sunday next month, but always right then, they're like, take me to water. And always, Peter and Paul, they were saying, yes, right now, arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, and they did. Sometimes that very night, they didn't wait till their grandparents came to watch an event. It was they realized the death, burial, resurrection of Christ could save them, and they said, let me die to my old self. Let me be buried like Christ, and let me rise to a new life. That baptismal scene is never separate from the evangelism that took place in the first century church. Christ's church encourages worship. Christ's church evangelizes the lost. Here's the third one. Christ's church establishes or educates the saved. Look at the next verse. Verse 20. Teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. The apostles had been with Jesus for 3 years. And I think that they had two main classes of study. When they hung around with Jesus, it was like they were in a college class their whole 3 years with him. And the first class was the teachings of God. And so through Jesus was teaching them what God wants them to know. Here's the teachings of God. Here's how you worship, and here's how you serve, and here's how you love, and here's how you forgive, and here's how you show mercy, and here's how you treat people that are sinners, and here's how you treat people that are saved but are arrogant. And so they were listening to the teachings of God through the mouth of Jesus Christ. That was their first class, the teachings of God 101. Let's put it like that. The second class that they were in was called the actions of God. They got to see God in action. They got to see Jesus, God in the flesh, God with us, Emmanuel. That's how it was introduced. How he responded to people. How he knew the word. How generous he was. How giving he was. How compassionate he was. And so not only did they know the teachings of God, but they knew the actions of God. And so when you read this passage, and it says, teaching them to observe, what they're doing is they're listening to the commandments of God, but they're seeing them also. Now, Christ includes this because he says, my people, my church, they're going to be people who follow the teachings of God, and they're going to be looking to me as an example of living out those teachings. You see, God knows us. He created us. And he said, I know what best life is before you. If you'll just do things God's way, it will be fantastic. And so the people of God, the church of Christ, the Christ church people, they grab onto this and they say, let me educate you on how to worship, how to serve, how to be like Christ. Which brings me to the last statement here. Jesus says, and I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age. Now you got to give me a little bit of leeway here because I got to work this in and start with another E. Okay, here we go. We emulate Christ. If you have somebody that you highly respect and you're walking with them through downtown, and then they meet somebody and they greet them very cordially and they are very pleasant and they're very interested in this person, and you really respect this person you're walking with, then you do the same thing. You give this person a big hearty handshake and a big smile, and you greet him cordially and you treat him well, and you really make sure that they know that you appreciate them too. You become like the person that you admire so dearly who's walking with you. And Jesus says, I'm walking with you the rest of your life. You church people, I am right there with you the rest of your life. The way that I treat people is how you're going to be treating people. The grace I give people, you're going to be giving to people. We are going to walk in a manner worthy of the calling that we've been having. Walk worthy is our theme for the year, and this fits in here so perfectly. Walk worthy of the person who's walking right next to you. We as a church are going to be teaching people to emulate Christ. Now, I didn't know that when I was a kid. I thought for sure that once I was baptized into Christ, I'm good to go, just kind of do my own thing and be a pretty good person. I used to try to emulate my brother who's older than me and was stronger and faster, and I just wanted to be Jay when I grew up. I went to college and he was a business major. I'm going to be a business major. I want to be like Jay. But then it was in college that I figured out that there's a higher calling than my brother now. To emulate him would not be a bad thing. He's a great guy, a great Christian man. But Jesus Christ, church, Christ says, my church, I'm going to be walking with them. And they're going to encourage people to emulate me. So set your standards higher when you talk about becoming like anyone. Let's become like Christ. Okay, here's the deal. Christ sets this up as like his last will and testimony. And he says, these are the important things that I want you to know, and my church will never fail. And at the end of time, when he delivers it up to God, it'll be strong, and there will be people that are faithful. No matter what kind of pandemic comes, they're going to be my people who do these 4 things. Even if all the ministries stop, these 4 things are still going to happen with his church. Number 1, my church is going to encourage worship. They're going to teach people, hey, it's important to worship your Maker, period. We are going to encourage worship, whether it's morning, noon, evening, whatever. We encourage worship. The second thing, we are going to evangelize the lost. We're going to teach them the story of Jesus, and we're going to wait and watch them be baptized into Christ. Let them put on Christ. Let the sins move out and the Spirit of God move in. That's part of what we do. That's why we do it the way we do it. We cannot separate those two. Christ Church evangelizes the lost. Christ Church establishes or educates the saved. All of our classes, by the way, I've been missing our Bible classes. We've got some great teachers, from kids all the way up to adults, and I miss those times together. Because at those times, I learn what it's like to be a follower of Christ, a disciple of Christ. That word disciple in Scripture is 255 times in Scripture, in the New Testament. And Christian is only 3 because Christian has been diluted. This is my soapbox I get on. But Christ says, my disciples, my followers who are emulating me, they're worshiping, they're evangelizing, and the third thing they're doing is they're educating each other how to walk worthy. And finally, Christ's church emulates Christ for the world to perhaps see Christ for the first time. I wrote a list of some things that the church has done for me over the years, and I'd love to share those with you right quickly if I can find them in all of my notes that I never even look at. Here they are. Nope, here they're not. I have taken note of some of the things that this church, Christ's church, that I've been a part of since a young boy, has done for me. Some things that are important. Listen to this list. Christ's church gave me friends on 2 continents and a couple of Caribbean islands that have walked with me every step of the way through life. Christ Church gave me that. Friends all over the world that I will spend eternity with. Christ Church gave me a big spiritual family around the globe who will welcome me in just because we share a faith in Christ Jesus. On the way home from Tennessee the other day, we were seeing our grandson, and thank the Lord, he doesn't look a thing like me, and big old round beautiful face. But on the way home, some people who, actually my son-in-law's parents said, well, just stop by here, spend the night with us. We had a great evening with them, and they're faithful people of Christ. And that's happened to me around the globe. In fact, I say that my parents loved us staying over at other people's homes. They would call ahead to a church and say, hey, you have any place for us to stay? A family of 7 savages. And every time they would say, yeah, go to so-and-so's house. They'll put you up for the night. Well, to get in a hotel was very expensive for 7 people. And I never stayed in a hotel until I was married, I believe. So we just stayed with church people because we had a shared faith. And some of them have been my friends for years and years. Christ Church gave me a big spiritual family. Here's another one. Christ Church gave me my wife, who just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Actually, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. She was a godly, dedicated follower of Christ. She and I were going the same way spiritually, following the same Lord, and so we decided to walk that life together now for 33 years. Christ Church gave me and still gives me opportunity to travel and to serve and make my life meaningful. You see, life is not just a pursuit of money, but a pursuit of meaning in the arms of a loving Savior. Christ Church has given me a lot. But Christ never mentioned any of those things in his top 4, or 5 or 6, or 7 or 8. These are all just byproducts. Things that happen because you're part of his family. But his interest in the top 4 and the last words that he mentioned, we've got to take note of. Here were the things that Christ Church will be about until the end of time. Christ Church will encourage worship. And so I want to encourage you to worship God either in a large group or a small group or by yourself all the time. Christ Church will evangelize the lost. Keep an eye out for those people who are not worshiping, people who really need to get to know the Savior and the story of Jesus, and who need to be baptized into Christ, to put on Christ. Keep an eye out for those, because we, church, we are interested in that. Christ Church establishes or educates, and educates saved people. If you're a part of Christ Church, I want you to know you're not done learning yet. You're not finished becoming like Christ yet. Anybody there yet? Sometimes we need someone else to help us grow. Come to Bible class. Get online and have a good study with someone. Know that Christ Church wants everybody to be educated to the point of becoming like Jesus Christ. Finally, Christ Church emulates Christ, becomes like Christ, so that the world might know him better. I pray that we will always do these things. And any church that is not doing those things may not be Christ's church. But those who are doing those things are a part of Christ's church that will last an eternity. Pray with me if you will, church. Our Holy Father, as we have not been able for the last few weeks to be involved in all of the ministries we typically are a part of, we want to today get a new start at the important things. And as we get into more of a new normal, help us to stay focused on these things that Christ focused on. And let all the other ministries flow from that. Father, help us to be the church that Christ established, that does the important things first. Father, give us opportunity, give us knowledge, give us wisdom, and give us strength through your Spirit that you give those who are in Christ. Thank you, Father, for this church and for the things that are accomplished for your kingdom right here in this area and around the world. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, we pray. And the church says, amen. God bless you, church. Go back to the basics. Let's stand and sing a song together.